A billion-dollar casino forced to fold. Retail giants, even banks, all infiltrated and drained of untold millions. The twist? This wasn't done by elite, state-sponsored hackers or shadowy cyber cartels, but by a group of teenagers. In 2023, slot machines in Las Vegas froze mid-spin. Digital room keys failed. Guests were locked out of luxury suites. The year before, top executives at major US companies had their phones hijacked and accounts drained. They call themselves Scattered Spider, a hacking crew that's hit some of the world's biggest corporations, triggered millions in losses, and embarrassed cybersecurity teams across industries. To make matters even more shocking, these teenage delinquents didn't brute force their way in. They walked right through the front door. Sort of. So how did a gang of Gen Z hackers take on Fortune 500 companies and win? May 2022, a new name pops up in the cybercrime world, UNC 3944, better known later as Scattered Spider. They didn't waste time. Their first tactics were smishing and vishing, forms of phishing done over text messages and voice calls. They would pose as company IT or help desk staff to gain access to the network, convince the employees to install softwares and programs that let them control everything on the company's side, and share passwords, authorization codes. Even resorting to MFA, or push bombing, essentially sending fake two-factor authorization notifications repeatedly until the victim either accidentally accepts or willingly goes through with it, wanting the notifications to stop and unaware of the fraudulence at play. And these targets weren't small businesses. They went after major companies, Twilio, PNC Financial, and New York Life Insurance. Once inside, they escalated. By mid-2022, they began using a technique known as BYOVD, Bring Your Own Vulnerable Driver. Specifically, they dropped an old but still valid Intel Diagnostics driver. With it, they could disable antivirus software and fly under the radar. They paired that with off-the-shelf remote management tools like AnyDesk and LogMeIn, letting them move through systems without raising alarms. As they learned more about their targets, they grew bolder. In late 2022 and into 2023, they were breaching cloud platforms, compromising password managers, and even spinning up their own virtual machines inside victim networks. At this point, it wasn't just phishing, it was full-blown infiltration. Next, they used ransomware. Not always deploying it themselves, but handing off access to ransomware groups like ALPHV, also known as Black Cat. Some of these intrusions ended in multi-million-dollar ransom demands. Many of these companies didn't detect the breaches right away. Scattered Spider often used stolen credentials and signed drivers, allowing them to blend in with legitimate traffic. No brute force necessary, just persistence, planning, and the ability to exploit human error. This wasn't some one-and-done operation either. It was a sustained and evolving threat, one that exposed just how vulnerable even the most well-known companies could be. Even still, these prodigies were just scratching the surface. Where money went, Scattered Spider seemed to follow. And where could they load their pockets better than Caesars Entertainment, the largest casino company in the US? Using publicly available information on LinkedIn and other platforms, Scattered Spider did what they do best: social engineering. To get inside, they didn't need sophisticated malware. All they needed was a phone. They called Caesars IT help desk, impersonating actual employees, names and departments they had already researched online. It was low tech, but alarmingly effective. With just a convincing voice and the right jargon, they tricked support staff into resetting passwords and granting access to sensitive systems. Once inside, they demanded a ransom: $30 million. According to multiple reports, Caesars quietly paid approximately $15 million to the attackers to prevent sensitive data. The company didn't disclose the breach publicly until they were legally required to file with the SEC. But Scattered Spider wasn't done. MGM Resorts was next, the largest casino company in the world, and this time the impact would be impossible to hide. Using the same techniques as before, they gained access to MGM systems, but now they were again working with Black Cat, a sophisticated ransomware operation with suspected Russian ties. Scattered Spider acted as the initial access broker. Black Cat came in to deploy the ransomware. It was a business partnership in the digital underground. And it worked. The attack on MGM took down everything. Slot machines froze mid-spin. Hotel guests couldn't get into their rooms. Digital keys on phones stopped working, restaurant reservations vanished, even the elevators glitched. For over 10 days, MGM's digital operations were in shambles. Guests waited in hours-long lines to check in manually. Some reportedly abandoned their stays altogether. And the chaos wasn't limited to customer satisfaction. Behind the scenes, staff were locked out of internal systems and communication tools. The financial impact? MGM reported over $100 million in damages, including lost revenue, recovery costs, and operational disruptions. And that's just the estimate. Law enforcement and cybersecurity experts were stunned, not just by the technical breach, but by the psychological manipulation behind it. This wasn't computer hacking as much as it was simply human hacking. With each headline-making breach, the heat turned up. The FBI, the UK's National Crime Agency, and Interpol were now circling. Scattered Spider wasn't just making money anymore, they were making enemies in the highest places. In late 2023, law enforcement made their first big moves. A major break came in October when a man known as Tyler N., a suspected key player in the operations, was arrested in Palma de Mallorca, Spain. Investigators tracked him through cryptocurrency transactions and online aliases. He believed to be tied to dozens of intrusions and even acted as a middleman for ransomware gangs like Black Cat. Then in November, a 17-year-old British teenager was taken into custody by Oxfordshire. Reports linked him to both the Caesars and MGM attacks. While his identity was kept confidential due to his age, leaks painted him as one of Scattered Spider's most technically skilled operators. But even with arrests stacking up, it wasn't enough. Because Scattered Spider was never one person, nor was it a fixed crew. It was a network. Members shared tools and access through Telegram, talks, and invite-only forums, blurring the line between who was in and who was out. And so despite the headlines and multiple arrests to key players, the attacks just kept on coming. In early 2024, a fresh wave of breaches slammed British retail giants. Among the victims, Co-op, Marks & Spencer, and Dior. Each was crippled for weeks. Their e-commerce platforms ground to a halt, warehouses froze, call centers collapsed. The attackers once again relied on their usual tactics, but this time with a twist. They posed as IT staff, sending calendar invites disguised as mandatory security trainings. Employees clicked, and malicious links were launched. Tools like AnyDesk and Screen Connect were quietly installed, giving hackers full control. One of the breachers reportedly exposed millions of customer records, names, emails, payment info, internal order logs. Another saw executive Slack messages, screen recordings, and embarrassing internal combos dumped to Telegram as trophies. And then came the emails, mocking, taunting executives for their poor security, threatening more leaks. Some were signed simply, still scattered, still watching. Meanwhile, back in the US, cybersecurity researchers at Mandiant and CrowdStrike were hard at work trying to identify and locate any more members of the operation. By mid-2024, their tactics had matured again. This time, they were leveraging things like living off the land binaries, signed kernel drivers, and abusing legit enterprise tools like Okta, Azure AD, and VMware Horizon. In one case, an attempted breach targeted a major investment bank. Hackers posed as outsourced IT contractors during Zoom onboarding interviews, looking to harvest internal access before ever stepping foot inside the system. The bank caught it, but barely. With arrests mounting, tactics evolving, yet Scattered Spider beginning to fail at jobs they once made look so easy, many would believe this was the end of the line for these hackers. But this wasn't the fall of Scattered Spider. Not really. It was more like a mutation. Arrests slowed them down. Public exposure fractured operations, but nothing truly stopped them. Because Scattered Spider was no longer just a group. It was a playbook. And as 2025 rolled in, the group, at least in name, began to fade. But their DNA lived on. Parts of the crew splintered into new syndicates, and their methods evolved with the times. now incorporating dangerously effective tools like AI-generated voices, deepfake credentials, and real-time social engineering over Zoom. And their targets? More diverse than ever. Healthcare, logistics, cloud infrastructure. No sector of the web is truly off limits. These teens proved something uncomfortable, yet something undeniable. That you don't need state sponsorship, military-grade malware. You don't even need to be an adult. You just need a phone, a voice, and someone on the other end who believes you. If you've made it this far, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.